Okay, Real Progressives. My name is Jeff Ginter. It's Wednesday, July 25th, 2018. Elections on their way. It's going to give it a few moments for people to show up. There is a couple of things I want to start with. I know that this is all about, tonight about the American dream, what it means. How can we revitalize it? And someone had mentioned to me that the American dream was originally conceived as propaganda, as a means of getting people to consume, to consume, to consume, to consume. And although I don't have any direct knowledge about that, I don't doubt that for a second. And I'll tell you this much for free. I don't care. I don't care what the American dream was. I don't care why it was conceived. I don't care who coined it. I don't care about any of that shit. I really don't. What I care about is the concept of the American dream, the idea of American exceptionalism. I care very deeply that we have been told for countless generations that we can have it all, that we can have anything that we set our minds to, that it just takes hard work. And I'm pissed off that that entire ideology has been thrust down our throats, a very tasty lie. And why was it a lie? Because they then set up the game, they set up the board to make sure that you can't achieve it, that you will spend all your life forever chasing your tail, never actually achieving the American dream. And a lot of people will paint you a picture about what the American dream is. It's the white picket fence, it's the house with 2.5 children, it's the job that gives you fulfillment and the ability to retire gives you. That's a wonderful thing, and many people may define it differently. And it's the fact that it can be defined differently. This is why I don't give a shit where the concept of the American dream came from. I don't care if it was a lie sold to us so that we would consume, so that the oligarchs would be able to have more product to sell. I don't care. Because just like the Constitution is an imperfect document, and it was intended, there's no doubt about the fact that it was intended to enumerate rights, or at least give the bare, idea of certain rights, the idea of certain rights. Didn't enumerate them all. But we understand that these rights were supposed to be for white gentrified men, rich landowners. It was supposed to be for them. And if they were ever going to sell airs about being of the people, it was still going to be white men. It wasn't going to be women. It wasn't going to be African American. As sure as shit wasn't going to be Native American. So the very idea of the Constitution is a nice idea. It is flawed. It is imperfect. But if it has perfection at all, it lies in 3 areas, to my reckoning. The first is the preamble to the Constitution, coupled with the Declaration of Independence itself. It sets out a guideline. This is who we are. This is what we want. And then it enumerates certain things with which it will try to achieve those ends. But I want to be able to make sure that we understand, without a doubt, what we're talking about here. And I will be doing this for quite some time, so get used to it. The Declaration of Independence says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, there it is, again, men, are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So right there, we're talking a lot of stuff. Just look at what it says. Now, it does say men. And we have to talk about that because, again, it's the imperfection of the document itself. They really meant it to just be for themselves. And if you see the history of this country, it is the history of us changing our minds, expanding our consciousness, including more and more people to cover these rights. So we do not lay the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence by the wayside because it's imperfect. We take a look at it and say, this still works, we keep it. This is imperfect, we will expand it. And this is just flat out wrong, and we will change it. And that is the second thing that is perfect about the Constitution, the idea that it can be changed, that they put in a mechanism by which future generations will be able to mold it further to meet modern demands that they can't possibly understand. And we further with this with the preamble to the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Look at these highlighted areas. Promote the general welfare. It's right there in the preamble. They are exercising their right to tell you what they are intending. Before they even get to the meat of how they intend to go about doing it, they're telling you in general terms what they want. The general welfare. That could be defined in a wide variety of ways. And if you're a selfish little prick, you'll look after your own general welfare. But there's that pesky part right there at the beginning. We the people. Not we the gentrified classes, not we the oligarchs, not we the business people, we the people. All the people. They didn't get it at that point, but they put it in there. Say that a lot of people, at the time of the signing of the Constitution were very upset that they didn't free the slaves at that time. So they put certain things in to make sure that everyone would have a chance to review these documents and make sure that it is still holding up to our current ideals. They didn't include women? We do. They didn't include people of color? We do. They didn't include Native Americans? We do. Secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. That means themselves and future generations. They know what they're talking about sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. They got it right. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men, all man, woman, child, if you're a carbon-based life form, are created equal. See, we make changes. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these, not exclusively these, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And what do we need in order to pursue life? Well, it would be nice to have universal health care, wouldn't it? To pursue liberty. How about a federal job guarantee? The pursuit of happiness. I can think of any number. How about breathable air and drinkable water coming to our house? There's any number of ways in which we can apply what we have learned in the preamble and the Declaration of Independence to a progressive agenda. Governments are instituted among men to be able to get their just powers from the consent of the governed. We the people. It is a flawed document, but the genius is that it gets to be amended, that we get to make new choices with every generation, and it is our duty as citizens to be able to do so. So tonight, when I want to talk about the American dream, I want to talk about a real dream. I want to dream big. The American dream, as it has been set up to be a fucking nightmare. And it doesn't have to be that way. Derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. The consent of the governed. That means, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that means it's our fault. If you think that the Federal Reserve is actually in charge, that's our fault. If you think it's Congress, which I believe it is, because it is, it's our fault. We let these things happen. They can't happen if we all get up and say no. It's our fault, and therefore it is our responsibility to make sure that it continues. It is our responsibility to make sure that the dream continues, that it becomes reality. You got an American dream, you got to fight for it. You got to make it reality. And for generations, we have slowly allowed that to erode. We have let go of our responsibility. We have allowed it to be put in the hands of people that don't care about us. And we send them to Congress and say, please, sir, please take care of us. We have to do it. We have to insist. They're not going to do it for us. How do I know? They haven't. They have never once demonstrated a desire to actually do it for us. One or two people maybe. But as a group with the ability to actually get it done, no. Democrats are the good guys? I don't think so. How do I know? Because for 40 years, things have gotten worse. Things are worse now in my lifetime, now at age 48, than they were in 69 when I was born. By just about every metric, things are worse. And we have had Democrats and Republicans in the White House, and controlling of the House, and controlling of the Senate, and in each case, controlling all three at the same time. We have activist judges, we have conservative judges, we got all manner of shit going on out there, and things are still worse. Democrats and Republicans are not the problem. We are the problem. We, the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union. They're not talking about congressmen in order to form a more perfect union. They're talking about us. So for everyone that's out there that says you want to have a socialist agenda, you want to have government taking over, you want to have that people taking your rights, they have the ability to take everything. I'm going to look you right in the eye and say, you know what? You're absolutely right. If we allow government to be able to have all power, to be able to decide what rights we have and what rights we don't have, that's a problem. And I'm here to tell you that what you are just enumerating, the fears that you have right now, exist right now. Everything that we have is under threat. Everything has been taken away slowly, slowly, slowly. GDP keeps going up. Our wages keep stagnant. The natural course of inflation that happens over the course of a lifetime. We basically call it the cost of living. As that goes up, our wages don't go up with it. We are burdened with greater and greater amounts of debt to be able to keep this economy going. You have fewer and fewer choices in your life as a result of how hard you have to work just to be able to get by. And then you're constantly bombarded on an almost never-ending basis of images on TV and movies and billboards and magazines telling you about the life you're supposed to have and what a piece of shit you are if you don't look like, whatever supermodel du jour happens to be on there. We are the ones that keep this economy going. The 1% love to call themselves job creators. Fuck you, you're not a job creator. You have no ability to create a job if we don't buy your products. We are the job creators. We spend on your shitty little products because your advertising tells us that we must. And then you have the audacity, the gall to turn around and say, what good people we are. We provided you with jobs. And no one ever stops to look at what shitty jobs you created and how little you pay. And in order to keep the whole thing going, we have to go to banks and take out loans, take out credit cards, predatory lenders, so we can be able to pay our rent. All so we can keep this whole thing going. All so that you can just bathe and marinate in all the money you're making off of our backs, off of our sweat and labor. So to everyone that says you want to give all this power to government, are you crazy? They'll take everything. And yeah, they're taking it right now. The difference is that we are the government. If we simply say to the government, you're going to give us single-payer health care, and you're going to give us a federal job guarantee, and you're going to give us 100% green energy. We tell them that that's what we want. And let's say that they actually do it. If we go home at that point, then we are fucked. If we do hard work and get the people in office that will actually therefore do the policies that we say, and then we pat ourselves on the back, as we did when we got President Obama, we patted ourselves on the back, and then we went home. The hard work is in between elections. The hard work, the really hard work, is the sustained effort to make sure that government is now and forever will be for, of, and by the people. You have to hold them accountable. You can't give them an inch. That's what has to happen in order for you to have the good life. That's the American dream. The dream for me is this. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. And imagine this. Imagine you have a job that you love. A job that gives you fulfillment. Imagine that you are able to have this job and you are able to go see a doctor whenever you want. That you have the ability to take time off from that job to go to the doctor. No one's going to put up an argument. No one's going to put up a fuss. He has to go to the doctor. Make sure it happens. That there is a clinic within walking distance that will be able to provide you the medical services you need. Imagine, if you will, that you have a roof over your head. It doesn't have to be a mammoth roof. I'm not saying everyone needs to have a mansion. How about just a one-bedroom apartment that doesn't cost you 3 pay cycles to be able to pay for? I'm talking about the ability to have a roof over your head. Just as a basic guarantee, you get a job that you love, you get the ability to go to the doctor anytime you need to. You need a prescription, you just get the prescription. Going to the doctor didn't cost you a dime. You did it because you needed to. You did it because you had a fear of something. You had a pain somewhere. You went to the doctor. They provided the test to make sure that it was nothing or to discover that it was something. You need medication, pick it up on your way out. Imagine you don't have to put off getting married and starting a family, because we all know how expensive that is now. And imagine you get to send your children to school. And imagine that your children get to go into a school system that actually cares about the child. That they are not glorified babysitters. That they are actually staffed by professionals, by teachers, by social workers, by community organizers that will actually look after the child's well-being. That they will engage with them and discover what their passions are. You got a passion for science, great. Let's get this person into an accelerated science course. Well, this person can't sit still. Has anyone considered the idea that this person is a dancer? This person is constantly questioning authority. Maybe this person should be a lawyer. We look to the individual child and tailor things to their abilities. And this is not private education. This is public education. The envy of the world. Some of the highest paid employees in the entire continental United States would be teachers in the United States, because training the next generation to deal with whatever God throws at us is a horrifying prospect. And we need to make sure they are prepared to be the best version of themselves possible. Imagine clean air, trees everywhere. Unless you live in Las Vegas, I get it. You're not going to get trees in Las Vegas. I'm just saying, where the environment is treasured, it is cared for, it is looked after. Where the air is sweet to the lungs. Where the water flows freely and clean to your tap. Where Nestle can find a wonderful job on the federal job guarantee because we don't fucking need them. They're certainly not going to be privatizing our water systems for their own profit. Imagine a world where we are exporting peace instead of war, where we can take this huge military-industrial complex that we allowed to take over such huge amounts of our economy and to hold it hostage. You cannot do anything against the military because our economy will collapse. Well, fine. How about we transform it? How about we take all this technology and all the people and all the surrounding tertiary jobs that surround it, and we, instead of building bombs, we build spaceships? How about we repurpose it for, colonization of the moon? How about we explore Mars? How about we start looking to other galaxies? How about a world in which we actually subsidize clean science? Clean house at the FDA. No one works at the FDA that has any interest in pharmaceutical industries or in any way, shape, or form private industry. These are professional scientists, and they are there to make sure that good science is done. Same thing with the Department of Agriculture. Tell them to kiss, big meat and big dairy goodbye. Thank you very much. Goodbye. You don't get to work in these industries unless you are a top professional. You will be well remunerated for your time, but you don't get to have anything to do with the agencies with which you're supposed to be regulating. And then we actually get some real scientific research going on. I don't know, maybe we cure some disease? Cure disease. You know why? Because the federal government doesn't need any kind of revenue. It doesn't need to make any profit off of the investments that it makes. No monetary profit anyway. Imagine this world. This is my American dream. A dream where we can all be the best version of ourselves. When we are all looking out for each other. When we're all looking out for the next generation. We have it this good. How good can we make it for the next generation? Right now, we have the me generations. Greed is everywhere. And it's rampant, and it's crushing us. And we are to blame. You want to blame the oligarchs, and you absolutely have to. They've got blood on their hands, and I don't mean that with any amount of hyperbole. Except for the literal blood. I'm sure they don't have actual blood on their hands. But they are responsible for death and deprivation and misery. They are responsible for it. But they wouldn't have been able to get away with it if we were in their way. It's going to take sustained action. Revolution to begin with. Bloodless revolution. But then it's going to have to settle into the long, hard work of citizenship. Yes, you don't want to give government power just because, and then expect that you're going to be able to go home and start watching American Idol. You're going to give government power. Why? Because you are the government. You're sending a representative to be able to be your voice in Congress, so you better exercise your voice. This is what we're talking about. The American dream. It has been a nightmare if it ever actually existed. And for that short period of time between 1947 and 1973, for those that it did exist for, the expanding middle class, it didn't exist for a large swath of the country. But no one was listening to them. No one was listening to African Americans. No one was listening to Native Americans. No one was listening to women. No one was listening to migrant workers, immigrants. No one was paying attention. The TV and the movies and the news, they weren't for them. They were for the white people. That wasn't justice. They say, make America great again. That's what they're talking about. And it wasn't great. If it didn't include everyone, how could it have been great? But we have the ability to make it great now. We can do that. Why? Because we have the resources, we have the capacity, we have the people, we have the tools, we have the talent. We can do it. Because it's never been done before. Making a truly great nation. A beacon on the hill, the shining city on the hill of Ronald Reagan's mythology. We have never been that, but we can be that. I challenge everyone listening. Become that within yourself. Inspire it in others. Don't settle for less than that. And it starts with two things. First and foremost, we need to understand how federal finance works, because the big constraint in things being great is getting things done. We can't be great if we don't have single-payer health care. We can't be great without a federal job guarantee. We probably won't be anything great or otherwise if we allow our environment to die, so we can't be great without clean, green energy. We will never be great if we don't talk about reparations for Native Americans, if we don't talk about reparations for African Americans. You can't just simply say, well, we're all equal now, when whites control the vast majority of all the wealth, and you're expecting everyone else to just catch up once we're all on the same playing field from a legal standpoint. No, it doesn't work that way. It can't work that way. That is a wonderful way to make sure that we don't even get to discuss it. If there's no discussion, there is no culpability, there's going to be no healing. And without healing, we don't go forward unless it's to go smack into another wall. We did some horrible, horrible shit, and we continue to do it to this day. And if we don't recognize it, own up to it, and make reparations for it, we will never be free. It will never happen. And while we're doing that, we should turn our attention to the things that we're doing in third world countries all over the world. In the name of imperialism, we are raping their natural resources, inciting wars and coups everywhere, which is just increasing the amount of volatility in the world. The whole reason we have people coming to this country illegally is because they're trying to escape the conditions that we created in the first place. We cannot look to places like Saudi Arabia, give them guns and weapons and ammunition that they are in turn using to create the worst famine conditions in Yemen the world has ever seen. And I don't mean simply the worst conditions in Yemen. I'm talking about the worst conditions the world has ever seen. The worst famine ever. And we are directly contributing to that. We will not be great until that stops. The conditions that are happening in Palestine right now, we cannot turn our back on it. We cannot absolutely, positively allow the state of Israel to go away, but we cannot allow that to be an excuse for abuses of power and genocide. We must always stand up for injustice, or stand up to injustice. My apologies. I'm not standing up to defend injustice. We will not be a great nation, a great society, until we recognize what makes something great. It's not about infallibility. We certainly will not ever be infallible. We will stumble. We will make mistakes. But we won't be great if we refuse to look at those mistakes. If we allow ego to get in the way. If we can't say, we were wrong, I was wrong. If we can't say, I was wrong and I'm sorry, and not only am I not going to do it again, here's what I'm going to do to make up for it. Here's how I'm going to make reparations. Here's how I'm going to make it right. That's what makes something great. That's what makes a person great. That's what makes a nation great. We stand up for each other. We stand up to injustice. We demand justice, economic justice, social justice, gender equality, equality in the workplace, environmental justice. We cannot allow water to be privatized and sold to us while shit is sent to our taps. These are important things that need to be discussed ad nauseum. We cannot have a great society if schools and theaters and concerts are being shot up on a regular basis. We cannot be a great nation if people feel like they need to arm themselves like their own private militia, because a flawed document tells them that they can, when every Supreme Court for 200 years told them specifically, no, you can't. You want to be part of a militia, fair enough. But it's not for self-defense. It wasn't until Washington versus Heller, when we had the first Supreme Court decision that actually affirmed your right to have a handgun, not an assault rifle, a handgun for self-protection. And it took 40 years of a militarized oligarch, please buy more of my product, NRA, to turn public opinion about what the Second Amendment was all about. And even Scalia, people who get giddy just thinking about conservative Scalia, even he affirmed that the assault rifle ban from the 90s was legal, it was constitutional, that the Second Amendment did not afford you the right to any kind of gun you wanted and any amount of ammunition. He said you should have a handgun for self-protection. That's it. That's bad enough as far as I'm concerned. But we should also look to that American dream and look to the conditions that lead people to wanting to arm themselves like the militia, that lead people to want to go into the black market because there's no room for them in the legal economy. If you want to deal with gun violence, just like if you want to deal with disease, you have to look at the whole thing. There is no silver bullet, no pun intended. There is no one solution that is going to take care of everything. But there's a whole bunch of solutions combined that will. And if you're not willing to do the hard work of all of it, you're just getting in the way. Or if you only want to work on one aspect while you allow other people to work on the rest of it, that is at least useful. Because if we don't do this, if we don't start trying to rebuild a modern American dream, if we allow pragmatism, centrism, if we allow the Democrats to occupy the center while the Republicans keep moving them closer to the right, if we allow that to happen, I'll tell you what we get. What specifically do we get with centrist policies? Well, we get stagnant wages, even as the GDP goes through the goddamn roof. We get less and less and less. Why? Because Republicans and corporate Democrats are in love with profit. They are in love with corporations. Absolutely in love with them. Profit above all else. Profit like it's the only thing that matters, when nothing could be further from the truth. I am not going to sit here and suggest for a second that profit is not nice, that you shouldn't be able to make a good living, you work hard, you should be able to get something for that. But there's no such thing as profit as king. That is immoral, completely immoral. Every argument I've ever heard in defense of capitalism, in defense of a free market, always puts the rights of the business people, the entrepreneurs, always puts their rights above the rights of the people who will be affected by what the business people are doing to get their money. So whether it's about pollution, whether it's about zoning requirements, no matter what the argument is, it doesn't matter. In business, we'll always say, you are not allowed to get in the way of my ability to make as much money as I want. They would point to the Declaration of Independence and say, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What about my pursuit of happiness? My pursuit of happiness says I should make as much money as I want. And it shouldn't matter what happens to everyone else. My rights. You cannot trample on my rights. There's no balancing act anymore. There's not even an attempt to make a balancing act. Nancy Pelosi won't fucking shut up about how much she's a capitalist. I can't tell you how much I don't give a shit that she's a capitalist. I care that 300,000 people die every year because of for-profit health care. I don't give a shit about profits. It should have no place at all in health care. But this, of course, is not the only thing that we get. Stagnant wages are wonderful. But we also get, pardon me, increased cost of health care, which is placed on the backs of the people who can least afford it. Now let's have a conversation about affordability. They always say that healthcare is expensive, and it is. And the first thing we're going to do is look at why it was expensive. How did it get to be expensive? Because it didn't used to always be that way. It used to be that if you got sick, you'd be able to go see a doctor, you'd pay some money, very likely whatever you could afford, and off you go. Doctors were nicely in the middle class. Then Richard Nixon comes along and decides that it's okay for people to make profit off of healthcare. Now we're off to the races. Now we've got insurance companies coming in. And this is where things really start to fall off the rails, because an insurance company is going to start making alliances. They're going to start having contracts with larger and larger groups of medical industry. Hospitals are going to group into larger hospital groups. They're starting to gobble up more and more of the private practice. This doesn't happen overnight. It's been happening over the last 40 years. But more and more and more insurance companies are getting contracts with larger and larger and larger swaths of the medical industry. Now, what happens? If you have a contract and the contract is written such that cost control is not really written into it. So people start charging more. People start realizing that you can actually start making a lot of money at this. Well, if I can actually start making money at this, well, let's do it. And the insurance company will pay it because they have a contract. The current insurance company would rather pay the rising costs than have to forego the contract. This is how costs keep going up. Pharmaceuticals just keep jacking up their rates. Insurance companies keep paying it. It doesn't eat up their profits. They just keep raising the cost of deductibles, raising the cost of co-pays. Basically putting more and more of the cost on you. Costs your employer more. They have to develop an entire wing of a corporation to be able to deal with the insurance. That costs them money, on top of all the money they have to pay for your individualized plan. And then you have to pay more. Insurance companies will pay the bill that all these other ancillary industries are charging, but they won't eat up into their profits. No. Insurance companies are there to make money for themselves. And if the cost keeps going up, not a problem. You pay it. I'm not going to pay it. You pay it. This is how the cost keeps going up and up and up and up and up. Because you have a system designed to allow it to happen. Everything that all Republicans and corporate Dems say they love about free market solutions. If we had more competition will make it more competitive, we'll get more players in there, costs will come down, quality will go up. No. That's not the way it works. 50 to 75% of the time, depending upon which part of the industry we're talking about, it does not work. It actually works the opposite way. Costs go up. This is what for-profit healthcare does. And it's got a body bag associated with it. But it keeps getting better. Because centrist policies also allow us to have poison in our food and our water. Congratulations! Remember when food used to be healthy? Remember when water used to be clean? Well, not when it's for profit. when it's more profitable to make shit food, but it's just so full of salts and fats and sugars, all the things that make you want it. They become drug dealers and you become the junkie. And it's cheap because it's heavily subsidized by the federal government. Remember the federal government? We the people. We do that. They do it in our name. And if we don't get involved in the conversation, we don't get a say. There's a reason McDonald's and Twinkies and Coke, there's a reason it's all cheap. There's a reason you can still find them in schools. There's a reason that 7-Eleven and all manner of fast food and McDonald's and Burger King are so heavily prevalent in low-income communities. But you won't find much of any of them in Bel Air. There's a reason. CEOs of these food companies don't eat their own crap. They've got personal chefs. But that's what centrist policies get us. And it gets better. Because on top of not being able to afford our health care, on top of not being able to afford much of anything, always having to go into debt, our personal private debt, on top of them giving us shit food and shit water, creating all the more need for the health care that we already can't afford, we also get rising unemployment and underemployment. Yay! Because centrist policies allow a system whereby if government allows, people in business will be able to take more and more and more. First, they break up the unions. They take away their ability to be able to collectively negotiate because no one's going to give you anything just out of the goodness of their hearts. You have to demand it. You have to demand it. So first, they break up the unions. No more collective bargaining. And then, as GDP continues to rise, we don't actually get pay raises. We help create the wealth of the country in producing goods and services, but we don't get to share in the benefits of that. So more money goes to the oligarchs. And as that more money goes there, they buy more and more of the politicians to make sure that they get tax cuts and get even more money. And with all this increased money, they get to help engineer a system whereby we have less and less voice. Because one of the wonderful things they did, Citizens United, money is speech. I should be able to say whatever I want. And if I have the money to do it, I should be able to have a huge microphone and a massive platform, bombard you with ads. You come home tired after you've managed to have that second job, and you don't really have the ability to play with your kids anymore, and you just sit in front of the couch, eating your takeout, doing the only exercise you have, that thumb on the clicker. And there's another political ad, and there's another action committee ad, and there's another this, there's another that. You're just passively taking it all in. Start listening to right-wing talk radio because they took away the fairness doctrine, and that allowed Rush Limbaugh and a whole host of other disgusting individuals to get on the air and start molding your thought process. It's not because you're weak. They played the long game. You'd be weak if it took you like a week, a month, a year for you to change your entire point of view. It took 40 years. You're not weak. You're just outmatched. You're outgunned. They realized that we had the real power. We had the numbers. And if we rise and exercise that power, they're done. So they wove a magic spell. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. And it worked. And now we have scarcity. Now we have wages that don't really pay the bills anymore. Now we have to take out loans. And if we take out loans, if we have economic insecurity, we don't buy as much. We don't buy as much. They don't make as much money. They lay us off. So we get rising unemployment and underemployment. A lot of part-time jobs out there, but they count. Thank God. But it's all leading to increased and permanent poverty and homelessness. That's the mother lode. That's what we don't really come back from. It is going to be a full-time job. If we get the federal jobs guarantee, so there's no more involuntary unemployment, one of the first things we're going to have to do if we expect there to be justice and reparations, people that have been forced into homelessness, we're going to have to find a way to bring them back. Because homelessness comes with hopelessness and eventually death. We need to be able to give them hope. Just like all the people that don't vote anymore because they think, what the hell is the point? We have to reach out to them and we have to give them something to be hopeful about. One of the greatest crimes we have ever committed is this increased and permanent poverty and homelessness. A whole system designed to make sure that if once you're in poverty, you never get out. You never get out. That's what we get. So we need to understand federal finance. Why? Because there's a reason we've been fighting this battle for 40 years. I don't want my tax dollars going towards... Yes, single-payer health care is a wonderful idea, but I don't think I should have to pay for your health care. Well, you don't pay for other people's health care. That's not the way the federal government finances itself anymore. Not since we went off the gold standard. Because number 3, genius aspect of the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8. The government creates the currency. It sets its value, and it sets the need for that value through taxation. Now, I don't have a lot of time left to be able to discuss this, but there are people out there that you need to listen to. If you want to private message me, I will get on the phone with you and I will talk to you about this until you do understand it. It won't take long. The easy thing to understand is how the federal government finances itself. The hard thing to understand is getting your brain off of how you operate your finances. We're always told the federal government is like a household. Do you create your own currency? As soon as you realize that the answer is no, then you must understand that there can therefore be no correlation between you and the government. Two completely different entities. You do not finance yourself the way the government finances itself. They create their own currency. You do not. Ergo, there's no palpable, what's the word I'm looking for? Way of looking at it. But here's the thing. Don't take my word for this. You want to look up modern monetary theory, and you want to look up these people. Warren Mosler, Professor Stephanie Kelton, Professor Randy Ray, Pavlina Chernova, Bill Mitchell, Stephen Hale, Fidel Kaboub, Scott Fulwiler. These people are amazing, incredibly intelligent. Other MMT experts, amazing man, Alice Winningham, Mike Norman, Rohan Gray. There are so many more. It is your duty to understand the federal government and how it finances itself. And it is not a taxing job, I promise you. No one is expecting you to be an economist. No one is expecting you to be in front of a large group of people and be able to discuss this intelligently. There was a time when I did not understand it, and I was just like you, thinking we were on a gold standard and money was scarce and we had to tax the rich. And you know what the rich don't want? They don't want to be taxed. So they take this incredible power that they have, the power of money that they don't create, the federal government does, but they wind up with all of it. And they use that power to be able to make sure that we don't have any. So if they've got money, that makes them powerful. We got numbers. That makes us more powerful. But just like any weapon, it is not powerful if it is not used. So be a warrior. Be a love warrior. Use love. You want to have your family taken care of. That's going to mean You're going to have a federal job guarantee to make sure you can never fall into poverty ever again. Yet you're going to have single-parent health care to make sure that you will never go bankrupt and be unable to pay your bills ever again. That you're going to need to have 100% green energy right now, so we will continue to have a planet that we can live on comfortably, happily, for generations to come. Why? Because you love yourself, you love your family, you love your neighbors. Do it for love, and do not be convinced that we can't do these things because we don't have the money. Money is immaterial. And those people will guide you to the truth. It is easy. Follow me, follow this video, follow Real Progressives. You'll be able to find all the resources you need to these experts. I'll give you their names again because it's so important. Warren Mosler, the father of modern monetary theory. Professor Stephanie Kelton, my hero. She is the one that gave me my aha moment. Randy Ray, Pavlina Chernova, Bill Mitchell, an amazing man. Stephen Hale, I can't say high enough things about him. Fidel Kaboob, an amazing speaker, a mover and a shaker. Scott Fulweiler, amazing. Ellis Winningham, you won't find a better teacher about MMT than him. Mike Norman, Rowan Gray, I love these people. Please, look them up. There is information that is your birthright. This is incredibly important because what we don't want is this.
At the time, my mom was really worried when I got my lupus diagnosis because she was like, you were going to have to go on Cobra and we can't afford that. And it's a pre-existing condition. All we could see was like, how am I going to pay for any of this in the future?
How are you going to pay for any of it? What are you going to do? We're talking about real fear, life and death. That is not a great society. That is not the American dream. You live the American dream. You don't have to worry about that. Not that you're not going to have to worry about disease. You will get sick, very likely. You'll have an accident. There's always going to be a moment in which you're going to need to access health care. What you shouldn't have to worry about ever is how are you going to pay for it? Will you be able to keep a roof over your head? Will your prescriptions be expensive? Will you have to be able to deal with this?
The medications my rheumatologists have me on is just so exorbitantly expensive that they give me all the samples that they have because they know Medicaid won't cover it. And then I'm on an injectable medication to prevent more blood clots. That one's incredibly expensive. I always dread the cost of any of these going up anymore. I don't know how I will afford anything, especially with co-pays. I'm on Xeljanz, and I think when it came out, I want to say in 2012, 2013, it was a new drug, and it was only around $15,000, but now it runs upward of $50,000. Yeah.
Medications have become incredibly expensive. Most people are insulated from knowing exactly how expensive it is. Most people, not all people, clearly. Because the pharmaceutical company is basically throwing spaghetti at a wall to see what will stick. What could we charge this year? How could we extend our patents by giving it a new coating? Not really fundamentally changing the medication at all, but just doing something different to it so we can extend our patents and keep charging highly exorbitant prices. And insurance companies will pay for it. But for those people that don't have insurance or have shitty insurance that doesn't pay for much of anything, you're on the hook for the lion's share of it. And if you don't have any insurance, you're on the hook for all of it. And shit gets expensive real fast. And here's what we're really missing. Here's what we lose as a result of this.
I've had so many experiences in hospitals and my clinics everywhere with so many good nurses and so many amazing medical professionals in general that's really kind of inspired me to become a nurse myself. I've always been interested in medicine and I want to be able to give back. Without my nutrition, without my medications, I don't stand a chance. I want to give back. I want to have a career, and having access to healthcare is the only way I can possibly do that. My family doesn't make a ton of money, anyways, we struggle for pretty much everything. And to have health conditions like I have, I always feel like I'm draining every last resource, and I don't want to do that my whole life. Like, I want to be able to have a career where I can survive and I can help my mom.
We are losing one of our most valuable resources: people. We are throwing them away like they are nothing. This woman wants to be able to be in a position to give back to her community. She's not looking for charity. Charity is when someone who has something looks down with pity upon someone who has nothing, and out of the goodness of their heart gives freely. And that's a wonderful thing. But we're not talking about charity. We're not talking about socialism. We are talking about federal priorities. We are talking about what do we value in this country. And don't tell me that we don't value things in this country. Right now, we value war, we value profit, we value the 1%, we value all manner of things that have nothing to do with you and I, except to the degree that we can prop up those things. That our labor and our lives and our deaths prop up the 1% and the military-industrial complex and the pharmaceutical companies and the insurance industry. We have value to them in as much as we help them have the life of luxury that they have always dreamed of. Their American dream. What about our American dream? We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, that means that we have to step up and be the government of our dreams. It is time for us to be able to tell the federal government, tell ourselves, tell our neighbors, that the era of the oligarchs is over. That it is time now, not later, now, to have a new deal, a Green New Deal. I want to show you something because our homework is not done.
In our day, certain economic proofs have become accepted as self-evident. A second Bill of Rights, under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all, regardless of station or race or creed. Among these are the right to a useful and remunerative job, the right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation, the right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return which will give him and his family a decent living, the right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom, freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad, the right of every family to a decent home, the right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health, the right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment, the right to a good education. All of these rights spell security, and after this war is won, we must be prepared to move forward in the implementation of these rights to new goals of human happiness and well-being. For unless there is security here at home, there cannot be lasting peace in the world.
Unless there is security at home, prosperity, there can be no peace throughout the world. They talk about America being the indispensable nation. And that's a laudable goal, depending upon what we do with that responsibility. Right now, we have been the bullies of the world. We have taken and taken and taken. And the world just can't take any more of that. There's nothing more to give. Love is what's going to get us out of this. Love that does not mean we don't get angry. We always get told about the tolerant left. Hey, you can't get angry at me. What about the tolerant left? I guess you're a bit of a hypocrite, aren't you? Well, we don't get to be tolerant of everything. We're not doormats. We're not punching bags. We're not punchlines. We are warriors for love, peace, and justice. And while we may not raise up an army and shoot you, we will raise up an army and take over. We will rise up. We are not tolerant of hatred and injustice and racism and xenophobia and sexism. We will not tolerate those things. We will surround them with love and we will escort them to the nearest exit. You Nazi fucking pig. Love does not mean we don't get angry. Anger is informing us that that which we love is being violated. And we will start acting appropriately, not with violence, but action nonetheless that will lead to the toppling of oligarchy. We will have the American dream, but only if we are worthy of it. And we will only be worthy of it when we stand up for it, when we demand it, when we do not go home because we're tired. The hard work is the long, sustained effort. And it begins with education about federal finance. So there will be no more excuses for those who would normally fight with us to stop fighting us because you think it won't happen because we have to tax the rich first. No. Understand federal finance and liberate yourself so that you can liberate everyone else. Savage Joy is coming on. I cannot say this enough. I love you. I need you. When you wake up tomorrow, look to the people around you and realize that you need them too. Don't give up on anyone. It's never too late for anyone. You can't reach them? Fair enough. Leave them alone for right now. Move on to the next one. Each one, teach one. I'll see you next week. Take care of one another. Bye-bye.